Welcome to this sit-down conversation with myself, Pabilo Timbo, and a very close friend of mine, Shuwel Ahmed. Over the last decades, we've ran a very similar journey and held each other accountable for the highest level of excellence. We started off as interns and rose to sort of senior leadership positions in a multinational company abroad, which is now worth over 200 billion. We then decided to sort of double down and invest in building a property portfolio, starting off with one house and now scaling to multiple units. We've had the opportunity to travel the world, start families, build programs for young professional students, and continuously invested in ourselves to push towards our potential. And the whole idea of today's conversation is really to reflect on the last 10 years. What has worked well, what has not worked so well, what we have done differently. And we tend to have these conversations quite a lot, but the difference today is we decided to press the record button. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation with Shuwel. There's not a specific agenda. We'll see where it goes. And then we hope with whatever comes out of today will be of value to the audience that are listening today. So with that, Shuwel, how are you?
I'm good. It's great that we've been able to get this time in to have this conversation. As you've already said in the great introduction, we've been having conversations like this for years now, literally more than a decade. So the fact that we can get it in a studio, on video, on audio together, it's another great milestone for our combined journey.
Yeah,
so great discussion.
Worth the wait. Yeah. I want us to go back to the very beginning when we first met. So 2012. I remember it very clearly. We started off a sort of summer internship program, started off in New York. I knocked on your hotel door, said, sure. And you said to me, yep, hi. But that summer was quite different and unique for us, right? We was leaving home for the first time. And I want us to talk a little bit about what that was like for us and the importance of leaving home versus staying in the UK to continue working. If you look back at that, what sort of comes to mind?
Yeah, so it's a great question for us to dive into. And I think for the listeners, in the introduction that Pabilo gave, you may have thought, okay, what these guys have achieved has been planned from day one, but actually it wasn't. And the great example is actually that summer experience that we had together. So before that summer, I had I remember the day, I just finished university, finished my last exam, was in London. After finishing the last exam, got my suitcase, went to the airport, flew business class for the first time to New York, get there, and then we're there for a 2-week training program. And then that's where Pabilo and I met for the first time, as he mentioned. And we met a great group of other international, US-based people embarking on their corporate career. And then we met for the first time. And then at the end of those 2 weeks in New York, we had the opportunity to then go to Switzerland for 3 months. And at that time, it definitely was not my plan. And I can probably speak on Pabilo, it wasn't his plan to go abroad at all. But then we got this amazing opportunity to go there for 3 months. And I think it opened my eyes up to what was possible. It opened my eyes up to the much bigger world out there. And it also made me really believe that actually there's so much more that you can go on to achieve as long as you can see it and you believe it as well. So it was a great opportunity to have that start. And I think, as Pabilo mentioned, our paths crossing then, more than 10 years ago, it started an amazing journey that we've been able to go on together as well. So
for me, I think it's funny enough we say that. I was excited I remember the plan. The plan was to leave the UK for 3 months and come back. Yeah. So it wasn't to stay. Yeah. And I think that's why I was excited, because it was to have a productive summer. Yeah. And so I had no plans of it turning into a decade, right, of corporate experience. But I think the power there was having an open mind. Yeah. Because I remember people saying to me at the time, "Why are you going?" I said, "It was only for a short period. I'm sure I'm going to learn something by traveling and going somewhere else." So at the beginning, it was exciting. And I think New York was great. We met great people that we're still in contact with today. I think then when I got to Basel for the first time, we can talk about the power of being in a new environment. But moving into a new space by yourself for the first time and having to figure out your next step is quite daunting, but you just take a day at a time, a step by step. What was it I remember when I landed, I should have taken the bus because I took the taxi. I had to pay like 50 francs more than what I maybe should have done. And I remember driving to my room and I thought to myself, I'm on my own. Yeah. Like, I know obviously we've connected prior, but it feels quite lonely. How am I going to make this a success? The internship at least. How did you feel like in the early the first week or so?
Yeah, I mean that first week or so, maybe also to give the viewers or listeners some context, I think up until that point I'd only been to 3 countries. Okay. The UK, Bangladesh and Saudi Arabia.
And wait, how many have you been to now already?
Now it's been more than 100.
We'll get
and since
into
Pabilo and
the
I,
importance of that.
yeah, since Pabilo and I relocated from Switzerland, which at the time was a big step, we've both relocated countries multiple times as well. So the journey definitely started there. But the first few, even the first few days, I walked into the accommodation that I was given during the summer, knocked on the door, and that person opened the door, didn't have a clue who I was, and then closed the door in my face. And I was thinking, okay,
I remember.
wow, is this the welcome that I want in Switzerland? But after that, we got registered, we got into our accommodation, and then we went into the campus for the first time.
Yep.
And I remember those moments because Pabilo and I were there together with, I think, 3 or 4 other interns who are also friends with us now. And then you walk into this campus environment in Switzerland where you're surrounded by international people who have worked in great places, people who have also been entrepreneurs, and you just get absorbed in that culture really quick. But it can be very, very daunting for those, especially who have not done it before and are experiencing it for the first time. But it was a exciting time, but I was definitely nervous and anxious at the beginning as well. How was the beginning bit for you?
Yeah, same. I think, but I started to realize the power of being in a new place.
Yeah.
Like, it stretches your thinking. You go from being comfortable at home to now saying, okay, I'm in a new environment. I don't know anyone, but I'm not going to fail. I need to succeed in some way, whatever that looks like. So your brain starts going to work on, how do I thrive in a new environment versus just not doing well and then perhaps going back home. So that started to play on my mind, right? And I think to be honest with you, one of the tips is the fact that me and you got together quite early was helpful. So I think the idea of connecting with someone when you get into a new environment makes a difference. You need that just to help ease yourself in. But once we got to the campus, it was a different story. Because, you know, it's like work, that campus in particular is like the UN. So many people from so many different nationalities, so many different stories to learn from. So I think that helped to, I say, sort of offset what it felt like being alone in a new town by having that sort of workspace and those people. So, but yeah, anything else that comes to mind for you about, you know, just sort of the power of being in a new environment? Because I think, I mean, if we fast forward a little bit, we can come back to it. You traveled to different countries, you worked in different countries. So what was it like the second time you traveled when you went to Tokyo for the first time?
Yeah, so I think it may seem, or it may sound a bit daunting to move to another country, no matter what stage you are in your career. I think the way that Pabilo and I both benefited is the fact that we did it a lot earlier. And it was also actually not part of any plan. It was just the best opportunity in front of us at the time. So I think in that case, for us to move to Switzerland, for both of us, probably a nice intro step in terms of moving was just relocating from where we grew up to university.
Right.
So that was actually a great intro step, and that already gave us the flavor of being around new people, new environments, new ideas. But we still had the comfort or the security to go home with a short drive or be nearby.
Sure.
And then to go from that to a country, which it does sound like a big deal, and it was a big deal at the time, but it was essentially like an hour and a half flight from where we were based in London as well. So even then, you're kind of building up the confidence. And with every move, you realize that, as Pabilo said, you can't fail. You will make it work as long as you keep going and you put your best foot forward and you look forward to meeting and connecting with as many people as you can. And then I think that gave me the confidence to then move to somewhere like Japan, which was at that stage all the way on the other side of the world and still is. But felt like I was moving almost to another planet at the time. But actually having those steps in between, meeting people like Pabilo, meeting the people that we worked with, having that network gave me the confidence to make that move. Now, if I was 18 and decided at the age of 18, okay, I want to go to university, but I'm going to go to a university in Japan at 18. That would have been way too big of a jump. But doing it gradually has definitely helped.
Just one point on that, actually. I remember when you moved to Japan, and I remember sort of the weeks after, I was like, nah, I need to go. I'm out. I need to go. So I was trying to prepare to move to Canada. Didn't work out, but I think for the right reasons. But it was just, I think it was yearning for a move because you understood what a new environment done for you. So seeing it early, as you mentioned, at the ages of sort of 22, 23, you thought, if I continue on this path and every couple of years we change the environment somehow, how can I further be benefiting, further stretch? So, I mean, what would you say for anyone that's thinking about moving abroad? Because it is a relatively big topic, you know. So if you're in the UK, you're coming out of university, you know, what's our take? Would you do the exact same thing again? Would you move at the same time? You know, what's your...
Yeah, I think this one, and it'd be great to get your view on this as well, P. I think This one, it really depends on what you're trying to optimize for the long term. I think for me, and also maybe to give some additional context, growing up, I had one parent, my mum, who was always saying, you need to stay in Portsmouth, go to university in Portsmouth, never leave Portsmouth, stay by my side. But then on the flip side, I had a dad whose approach was, if you get a great opportunity to go somewhere, then just go.
Yeah.
And then we'll figure everything out. And actually in the community that I grew up, this was actually quite rare for anyone, whether it was a mother or father, to have that approach in terms of the approach my dad had. Now, actually having that message in the back of my head, the idea of going abroad seemed like it's crazy to not go, and it was the best opportunity at the time for us. But as Pabilo already said before, and maybe we can deep dive it afterwards, even when you do that type of move, you do have people around you saying, are you sure you're going to do you want to go? Even my mum was like, why do you need to go abroad? Even after I moved from Switzerland to Japan a few years later, when I told her on the phone, okay, mum, this 3-month experience in Switzerland has ended up being 4 years. She's like, okay, cool. When are you coming home? I was like, okay, rather than coming home, I'm actually going somewhere else. All right, where are you going? I'm moving to Japan. And then her first reaction, the first thing she said to me on the phone was, am I doing something wrong? And I was like, what do you mean?
Okay. You never told me that.
Yeah, and then she was like, oh, am I doing something wrong? And I was like, what do you mean, are you doing something wrong? She's like, every time you're getting older, but every time you get older, you seem to move further away from me. And I was like, no, that is no, it's not the approach that we're trying to take. But I think the message there is, even the people around you, however much they have the best intentions, even if it's friends or whoever, they may not understand why you're doing it. But then ultimately, if your mission is you want to grow, you want to meet new people, you want to grow as quickly as you can, then there's no better way to do that than being in completely new environments where you can soak up. But your journey as well, P. So you moved from London to Switzerland. You already mentioned a bit earlier on about people saying, why do you want to go? Or how long are you going for? How did you navigate that? Because then, of course, you also have a strong family unit based in London. How did you navigate that dynamic, and also the people around you, of them understanding that you want to move abroad and the benefits from it?
Yes, I would have to say that the idea of working in another country wasn't a foreign concept to my family, because my father built an international career. So he worked over in the Middle East. But that was his path. So I think the idea of working in another country wasn't foreign. So I think what helps is, if you're doing well in that environment, it's clear for everyone to see. The case study is there. The proof of concept is there. And I think that's what happened to us. We started to develop extremely well from an internship to the next position. So it becomes very difficult then, or for anyone to say, I think you should come back home now, because I'm developing as an individual. But so I personally think everybody should try and find an opportunity or a time in their career, especially early on, to move into a new environment, right? Because as you mentioned, for a long time of your youth and your teenage years, you're in the same environment. And so your ability to stretch and grow is going to be very limited. So if you're keen to develop and transform as an individual, part of that is going to have to be moving to a new environment. The other thing also, I think about that, if you look at, in order to get sizable returns, you need to take a certain level of risk. I think us leaving the UK to go to another country was taking a calculated risk. And I think you can see it's reflected in the remuneration and the benefits and moving forward. So I think there's multiple factors to consider, but looking back, I mean, even now to today, I try to, move to a different rental home every couple of years, because it's part of that moving to a new environment, right? The family as well. Let's figure out a new way to adapt. So I think it's a part of growth. I think it's essential if you're trying to grow and develop. And when it's going well, it speaks for itself. So I think it makes it a lot. I think if we wasn't doing well, it'd be very difficult to make a case to stay. And I remember when my mother flew over for her first time, she saw the setup and she goes, yeah, there's no point you come back to London. Because I just needed to know that you were safe, sound, you're working, I can see colleagues, I can see the different groups. Go ahead.
So then maybe to wrap up this section in terms of those people that are thinking about moving abroad, whichever stage of your career that you're in, let's think about some real tactical piece of advice that we can give to people on how they can make that move and how to make the most of that move when they're there. What comes to mind for you?
I think it's about trying to connect with people that have already done it, to understand their experiences. Because if you try to calculate it and figure out yourself, you're probably not going to make the move. So I think it's important to try and, if there's a particular country you're looking to go to, a particular company, then speaking to people that work for that company and trying to get that relationship. I think the second thing, looking back now, is trying to have a plan. let's say you've got an opportunity that you're looking through. Developing a plan for yourself, it may be 2 years in that country and coming back, really helps, because then it's not this sense of there's no end to what I'm trying to build. So I think connecting with people, because that's part of relationship building, especially when you get over there. And I think trying to work on a rough plan, because then you can communicate that plan to family, friends, and socialize it. So it's not just I'll land and figure it out, although that's what's going to happen anyway. So I think those are probably my two main key takeaways on when you're thinking about moving. And ideally, I mean, if you can get with a company that can cover, right, the move, and they can set you up, I think that helps us also. So I think also the company you're moving, your company you're moving, working with, to be sizable enough that they've done this enough times. So if they're experienced in moving people around, build experience, then it won't be too much of it. They've done this before. Yeah. What's your thoughts?
So I think great points by Pabilo, and I think maybe to build on that, 100% in agreement in terms of if you're looking to move, try to move either with an organization if you're in the corporate space, or if you're going down the entrepreneurial route, already have an idea of what you want to work on, because going there with nothing at all planned, as Pabilo said, to have that plan, not to say it's impossible, but it just gives you a bit more of a head start once you land, when you're around a network of no people. The other thing that I would say, and this has definitely helped, because as we said, I had the chance to move in 2012 with Pabilo to Switzerland. And then since then, I've relocated 7 times now in terms of country moves. And the bits that have really helped are before going, just reaching out to your friends that you know have a network potentially in that country and destination, because telling them, okay, P, I'm moving to Greece tomorrow. I know you have friends in Greece. This is what I'm thinking of doing. If you know anyone there that I can connect with, let me know. Just from that message alone, when you land, you can already have a black book of 10, 20, 30 people that you can connect with, and you've got that bridge in between. So that's very practical. The other practical tip I would just say is, once you're there, say yes to anything and everything and all the events. Now, when I went to Japan, the first night that I was there, I finished my first day at the office, got home to the hotel that I was staying in, and I was sat at the end of my bed, and I was exhausted from the day, realizing, okay, I'm actually on the other side of the world with no one to speak with apart from my colleagues. What do I do? And then I went on an app and I saw that there were events, and there were lots of events that night. And 90% of me was like, do you know what, Shuwel? Have a rest. You've had a long day, a long flight.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah, that's definitely what I'm doing.
But then I realized actually that approach won't help, especially at the beginning. So the only other practical tip I would say is, at the beginning, especially the first 30 to 60 days, say yes to everything. If you're feeling tired, make sure you actually go on those days especially. And then over time, you'll find the people that you connect with, and then those relationships can end up lasting a
I do remember that one advice you said. You said life is better when you say yes to everything. And it's in the right context.
Yes, of course,
it fits and makes sense. So we've had the opportunity of building a corporate career, with that company over a 10-year period. And in that time, we've had the privilege of being able to work, network, have one-to-ones with the board of directors, chairman, CEO, CFO, division heads, leadership right through to the country. And I'm interested to understand, as we look back now, what type of leaders inspired you and why? Because leadership is such a crucial component to your personal life, building an organization and building these businesses that we're working on as well now. So we've definitely worked on our leadership skills. We've definitely paid attention to leadership as a theme. It'll be interesting to understand and talk to you a little bit about some of the leaders, because we've had some great examples to follow. What comes to mind in terms of who inspired you, who got the most out of you, and how they're able to do it?
Yes. As Pabilo has said, we've been so fortunate to work in a company that has international scale, and then with that international pedigree, and then with that you're able to attract international talent as well. Yeah. Now, it's the pharmaceutical industry, which maybe not everyone is familiar with, especially in the UK, I notice, where especially as a graduate, you're focused on consulting, banking, law. You don't really know much about it in finance, right? But to give the listeners some context, if this company was stacked in a list with the largest companies in the globe, then it's actually one of the top 50 largest companies based on market cap globally. Yeah. So that's just to emphasize the scale of the company. Now, with that, as we said, it brings a level of talent and a level of leadership at the company. And as Pabilo has said in his great opening, we've been able to meet some great leaders through that journey. Now, the leaders that I have found the best, and these are lessons that we've tried to carry on through our own entrepreneurial endeavors and other spaces, are the leaders that actually, the more senior they get, the more humility they show.
Yes.
There's also a sense of curiosity. So I think in other fields that we've been in, where you can tell someone doesn't have that much experience, they can come across that they know already everything about the industry. But I think what we've seen, the larger the business, the more experiences people have, the more they realize that there's still so much more to learn. And I think that element of curiosity has definitely come through in terms of our personalities that have grown over time and how we're continuing to develop. So the level of humility at the top, the level of curiosity, the drive to get things done quick.
Yeah.
The more senior people that we've interacted with, the quicker they actually end up responding to messages, to requests, to burning issues in a business and company. Again, whether in your large company or a small scale business, these are important factors. And then the last one I would say is actually willing to give time to the next generation of talent.
Yes.
Whichever stage of that career. So we'll get into our business endeavors later on, but I think that reminded me of, okay, whichever business you have, whether you're leading it, you're working in a large company, or you have your own business, it's important to invest in the future and invest in the team that you're working with as well, whether it's giving them training, opportunities, exposure, whatever that is. So, but that's a few that came top of mind for me. But how about for you?
Yeah, I think there's some great points there to unpack. I think the one you mentioned was the leaders that were most inspiring were those, because it's about how do you get, you've got 100,000 plus employees coming to the company to work every single day. And how you get these individuals to be more connected to the overall mission. It's you have as a leader have to be more connected to them. So you've this gap that they think is there, you're cutting it down. And so that humility you mentioned, leaders asking questions to you as an individual or walking around the campus and mixing with people. They're not, far away or off. You never see them. It's only via emails or things of that nature. So I think, serving the organization, serving the associates that you've hired, I think is what is inspiring, because ultimately we understand the magnitude of what you have to do at your level, but you still found a way to make time for the people that are committing to this overall mission. And then it feels more like a family unit, right? And so, but there's still obviously a level of understanding where they are, right? So it's not saying that they're my friend and rubbing shoulders and I can just set up a coffee anytime I want. So I think that helps. Otherwise it's very, not standoffish, but where you stand, where they stand, and then it's sort of black and white. So I think that's probably, those have been the leaders who have that characteristic in them that have been very inspiring. I think when I think about also what got the best out of me, I think that's a big question. I think one of the topics when I look at it is the leaders that were able to get me to bring my full self to work. And coming from the places that we come from, our backgrounds, we wear a number of masks in the beginning because you're not too sure how you need to show up in an environment which is very foreign, right? And there's not a lot of us represented at that level. And how are you what does it take to succeed? And so when you have a leader that is able to help you understand, no, I need you. I need the person you actually are. I need that level of energy. I need the level of thinking. And I need the questions that you have, which are very different. And someone being able to properly bring those differences together to create the ultimate outcome, to create the success, that is like, you would ride or die for that leader. And I think that's inspiring because they've just found a way to get the best out of you. So bring your full self to work. I don't want a version of you. I want the full you. So that's the thing that really sticks out in my mind when I think about the last leader that I worked for, and how she was able to do that for myself and also the team as well. And you just, your brain, you start thinking more creatively, right? So a couple of things that maybe come to your mind in terms of who got the best out of you.
I love that point that you bring up, P, in terms of the authenticity, right? Because I think, especially as you mentioned, for people of our culture, to feel like you can bring your authentic self, whatever that means, in a corporate environment, especially when you feel like you're surrounded by such high performers, it can be a mental shift to make. But the ones that are able to get that unlock from you, as you said, you're willing to go to the end of the world for them. And it made me think about my own leadership journey of, okay, when I'm actually around people, try and invite people into your team, into the discussion from different backgrounds, from different environments. And rather than shying away from it, ask them more questions. Again, demonstrate that curiosity. What culture are you from? Or when people have their own traditions in whichever country. I mean, as you mentioned Switzerland a few times now, Switzerland as a country has its own traditions. They have the carnival. They have special badges that they wear during special times of the year. There's amazing mountains and hikes, and being outdoors means a lot to them, right? And then compare that to the Japanese culture, which already has a culture in itself, and all these other countries that we've been able to visit and experience. I think that ability to appreciate people's culture and then invite them to bring it out does unlock a lot of value for companies. So that's definitely something that I can 100% agree on. I think to close this section, as we have worked with some great leaders, what are the quotes that have stuck in your mind and that have, most importantly, led to application after?
Okay, so I've got a couple from in no particular order that come to mind, and I was thinking about this prior to the conversation. I think that the first one that comes to mind, and this was Daniel Fasella, the chairman. He would say things like, aim to achieve the slightly impossible, and it just gets you thinking a lot differently. He also says, once a solution has been agreed, waste no time in execution. You cannot stagnate on a proposal. So it's very simple, and it just gets you to a lot of success is simplifying what seems to be complex. And that's I think the best advice is simple advice, but makes sense. I think even when I look at the next one, I think sometimes if you ask stupid questions, you get breakthrough answers. And we're in organizations and groups of people where nobody wants to ask a stupid question. It has to be complex. It has to have layers of depth to it. But actually, I've been in meetings where someone says, "Why are we doing that?" Complete curveball, and it's forced everyone to think differently. So it's what does success look like? And everyone thinks it's obvious, but actually it's not. Another question that was interesting was if our customers were sitting in this meeting, listening to us have a team meeting, would they be impressed? And you just go, our heads are stuck in the sand trying to figure out this solution. I had a finance quote here actually. The best productivity is increasing your top line. Harry Kirsch. And so we talk a lot about managing costs, being cost efficient, but your ability to figure out how to drive revenue is ultimately the skill. It's ultimately what, if you can bring that to the table for any organization, you're making a difference. So it's cutting costs. You cut costs because I think you can't drive the top line. So that's what it is. And then I think the last thing I'll probably say here, which is just, I think is we've looked at this in our own personal life. It's easy to change when things are going bad, but it's harder to change when things are going good. And that's when you should make the change. And so it's being proactive rather than reactive. So these are some of there's so many. You've got so many. I just had to think of a few. But these are some of the points that have been mentioned by leaders across the organization that they get you to think differently about your professional and personal career. Because then it's all one. It's leadership. We talk about who inspired us, who got the best out of us, how they did. What advice personally was given to you from certain leaders in your career as you was building a career that stuck with you even to this day, that helped you, right, in your steps that you built?
There's a couple of things that come top of mind. The first one, rather than a specific conversation with someone, it was more of an approach by leaders that could see something in me that I couldn't yet see at the time.
Wow.
That ability to look into someone and be like, look, I know you've got potential. I know you've got more potential than you believe right now.
Wow.
But if you keep going on the trajectory that you keep going on, then you will get to a level that you can't even dream of right now. Wow. And that ability of being able to do that to anyone in your team, your company, your organization, when someone says that, to the point that Pabilo said earlier about in an authentic manner, then that just switches something on and activates something deep in you that I can still feel it today. Even just talking about it again, it kind of reinvigorates me again. And having those conversations and being told those types of things and having an approach like that very early on in your career can have massive knock-on effects in terms of where you're thinking and where you're going. So that's definitely the one approach of just people believing in you more. then
Yeah.
you believe in yourself. I think the other thing is to, and this is cliche, we've heard it many times as well, right? But trying to take the most uncomfortable option in your career as
Yeah.
the next option.
Yeah.
And that could mean taking a role from finance into another area, which we've done.
Which you did. Yeah.
Whether that could mean taking a role where you're an individual contributor to working internationally leading teams, which we've done. It could be a role of moving from one country to another. It could be the idea of starting a business from scratch. All these things are the most uncomfortable option at the time. But if you keep taking that most uncomfortable option, then the growth curve just keeps getting more and more vertical. And then the more vertical it gets, again, you get to a much higher destination a lot quicker than if you would take the easier option. So those are the two more approaches and philosophies that I've been able to experience in my career, and I know you have as well, that has had the most knock-on effect over a long time period.
And I think, that speaks to a point that resonated with me very strongly, which is when you're building your career, we can come on to sort of the calls that we got right, is you should be spending more time looking for the right person to work under versus the title itself. When I was chasing titles, I didn't have the best experience. And when I focused on the right manager to work under, I had the better experience. And so sometimes and it's just because their leadership, their way of thinking, their way of giving you certain opportunities just works very differently. And it's not a knock on the person, it's just that people are shaped differently and they've come through different experiences. But chasing titles you can find yourself in a challenging situation if that's all you're focused on.
Completely agree.
And so it depends on what people are trying to achieve. But I personally think, you should be spending time finding out who's the right person to work for. And even if the title's not quite attractive, the opportunity that they'll provide you will be stuff that you can't quite see on a piece of paper. You can't write it on a job description just because of their thinking. So I think that was something which advice that definitely stuck with me. And you could see also in other people's career. When they worked for certain individuals, they excelled. And for others, it was just moaning about what was happening. So that was something. I think the other thing also was in everything that we're doing in work is, what would you do if this was your business? Associates come to work, they clock in, they do the work, they go home. And that's fine. That's what you've been paid to do. You've been paid to add value. But if you can think a little bit differently in terms of this is a $200 billion plus company it's worth. What would you do if it's your company? And I think that advice changes your thinking and changes your contribution. And then you come to the meetings totally different. Now, of course, you need to have a manager that can sort of support that way of thinking and that type of challenge. But if you can think about it as yours versus it's not mine, I'm just here to collect and I'll go home, it's two different careers you're going to have, So there's a couple of things that come to mind in terms of advice that I think has worked out well. What about some of the calls that you think, you're looking at your career, what are some of the calls you got right, and perhaps what are some things that didn't go so well?
What went well, definitely straight out the gate from university, moving abroad, because it just shocked the system, go to a new country, surrounded by great people, and that was exactly the boost that I needed at the earlier time. Then, for me personally, relocating to the different cultures that I've been part of, learn how business is done, how cultures interact. That is something that also I'm happy that I've done. And then also shifting from both of us starting off in finance careers to then broadening out to strategy, sales, marketing, etc. I think what I wish I did differently, or if I could have done anything differently, looking back, the first 5 years I spent in a finance role. Okay. And I think if I looked back, I probably would have made a switch quicker out of the finance function, just to already broaden out the skill set more, if that was already my thinking. If I had my heart set on becoming a CFO, then it makes sense to stay on that track. But I already had the inclination early on that finance wasn't the right path for me, but I kind of ignored that. So that's probably one thing. And then the other one is, and it speaks to that point of switching over to something early to learn a bigger skill set, broader skill set. I wish I was able to think bigger earlier on.
Interesting.
But I think that was just a testament of the experiences that I had growing up, what I was exposed to, and also what I was exposed to at undergraduate university and what I thought the goal was. Those are probably the two
Interesting.
things.
Okay.
Because then based off the back of that, I would have made different decisions and maybe different vehicles and different locations as well.
I think your one of the points you mentioned actually relates to a piece of advice that was given, and someone said to me, look at your career, try to navigate your career like a profit and loss statement. So spend some time in sales, spend some time cost of goods, manufacturing, spend some time in expense line items, marketing, finance. And it was an interesting perspective because effectively, to your point, it's not spending too much time in one particular space. Now, it depends on how you want to specialize and how you want to generalize and how you want to build your career. But I think that can provide you, if you go into it thinking, what opportunities can I get from different spaces? I think you get a much more wider experience that can then help you as you build your 20, 30, 40-year career. So yeah, looking at it through a profit and loss statement, I think is a good idea. And you spoke about something also, which is like the power of combinations. So in the company that we worked for, you've got the divisions, and you've got different countries. So it's like trying to achieve a certain matrix. I'll work in this therapeutical area in this country. My next role will be in a different therapeutical area and maybe a different division. So you're just trying to couple different parts of the organization to build your experience. I think, me, when I think about what I think has worked well, I think the very first thing that I think worked well was recognizing the opportunity. Because we've seen people come and go because they failed to recognize the opportunity, which was that internship, which was the seed. If you can water it well, it can turn to something meaningful. So the power of recognizing opportunity and committing. So extra hours on the weekend, extra hours in the evening to make a name for myself because I believe that there's a bigger opportunity here. And they only pour into you if you pour into it. So I think that's the first thing that worked well. I think the second thing that worked really well, you definitely can speak on this in terms of the program you built, was understanding the power of opening doors for others, even when you're trying to open doors for yourself. And so it's never a case of I need to get to a certain stage in my career before I start opening up programs for the younger generation, younger demographic. After the first year of us being there and it being a success, we turned back to senior leaders and said, look, you need to continue this SEO program because this is what it's produced. And we believe with our support, we can actually get similar type of caliber graduates to come in and also make a difference. And that's exactly what happened, right? Over 100 came over, in that sort of 5-6 year period when we were managing it. And we could have decided to be selfish and say, nah, I don't think it's a good idea. We'll take it, but that wasn't in our DNA. And I think that was a good call that we made. And before you knew it, it was like, we started off as no one from the UK. Then it turned into a bunch of us from London and different places, playing ball, etc. So I think that worked out really well. I think trying to move every 18 to 24 months was good. People talk about specializing versus generalizing, but I think the company encouraged that. So in your early part of your career, not necessarily rotations, but it's trying to 18, 24 months, I've got some experience, I'll move on to the next role. And I think we stayed as long as we stayed because it was literally a new role every two years versus the same role for 10 years. So I think that was probably something that worked out really well versus saying, no, I like where I am, I'm comfortable, I don't want to move. And it goes back to your point about go for the uncomfortable. The thing that probably, when I look back, I should have changed, I think it really goes back to that point around chasing titles. It just doesn't work out. I think if I had just paid more time and attention to working for the right leaders, it's about, I'm going through a personal transformation. It's a personal experience that I'm trying to get the best out of myself to then deliver for the company. And so a title doesn't necessarily do that for you. And it can come with different sets of challenges. It can also work out, but I think that's probably the biggest thing that comes to mind. And I think the other point that I probably would have tried to change sooner is try to push for people experience a lot sooner. So it's another layer of leadership. And I know you actually embarked on this journey. And so I think it's easy to be a one-man band working for a team for a long period of time. I think when you can then elevate to managing 2, 3, 4 people, you grow even further. So I think that was the opportunity that I missed. And perhaps it was, I'm used to doing this one-man band for different teams. And I think if I look back, I'd have tried to get in the last 3-4 years of my career. So, I mean, you obviously had the opportunity to work and manage people. What was that experience like versus prior, your prior experience?
I think what it definitely opened my eyes up to what we already spoke about, what good leadership is.
Yeah.
And even if you don't intentionally reflect and make a note of all the great things that we've been able to learn from others, just from going through the process of working with great people and not so great people, you naturally absorb into you as an individual, how would I want to lead a team, or what type of leader would I want to show up as, and also recognizing that there's still so much more to learn, so much more to grow. But I love that opportunity, and it's something that I think, and we'll talk about it later in this series, about how a lot of the things that we learned in the corporate space, we're able to translate outside of that, and then bring ourselves in terms of how we lead the different people that we're leading in that vehicle as well. So for me, it's great. I completely echo the learnings there as well. Trying to get that experience earlier as you can is great, and trying to get that development opportunity and not chase the titles earlier as well is even better. And I think maybe for the people that are watching or listening to this, if you're in an environment at the moment that doesn't serve the purpose of being able to grow, being able to work with great people, being able to be developed and change roles every 12, 18, 24 months, this was an environment that we were actually encouraged to do what we're talking about. So if you're in an environment or an organization that isn't serving you in those needs, but it's something that you desire, then probably go back to the step that we did back in 2012, which is just move into an environment that is providing those steps, rather than trying to stay in.
So. Very true. No, that was good. I think it's actually really good to reflect with you on corporate, and there's a couple of things you mentioned that I hadn't heard. I'm hearing for the first time. So I think I really liked the conversation that we had around that. I'm definitely looking forward to the next section.
Yes, exactly. And maybe here we can do a special shout out, because I think through our journey of where we've worked, the people that we've worked with, some of them may actually be listening or watching to this. If you are, thank you on behalf of Pabilo and I for the great lessons that you've shared. We're just a vessel of kind of sharing that to the audiences that we've been fortunate enough to create. And as Pabilo said, through great people that we've worked with through an internship program that we started with, probably also a shout out to SEO London, who gave us a platform to join this company. And again, for the listeners or viewers who may not be aware of this is an organization that provides internship opportunities to underrepresented minorities and open the door to them to large companies. And SEO London was the organization that gave us the opportunity to move to Switzerland. And then off the back of that and their great support, we were able to continue that program, as Pabilo has mentioned, to help more than 100 people. And then through our own initiatives, actually help hundreds and thousands of students after that as well. So it's been a great conversation, and looking forward to the next section.
Yeah.